I wouldn't give you $500,000 for Jofra. I want him, but I wouldn't give you $500,000 for him. If the IPL's after the India Test series and Jofra plays 3 or 4 Test matches in that series, I'd give you $10 million for him. Woo, 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 woo. Everything's going round in the air. Everything is, and I think that is unfortunately what's happening with Jofra.
I think if the takeover is going to come, it will be from within cricket, but with the backing of Saudi Arabia.
If you play cricket in Saudi Arabia, who's going to watch it?
A lot of people are going to be like, politics be damned. Saudi Arabia has a lot of money.
It's pompous old men who have been very good at the game and just stand there and go, well, I've got a tracksuit and I'm in charge at the top of the net and you bowl.
Yeah.
They don't tell them how to bowl, don't tell them how to field, don't tell them how to bat. There's no structure.
You go back to Pakistan and as Harmy said, someone comes in and they bring their friends in, that person goes, and the new person comes in and he brings his friends in.
It's Ben Stokes then that India would fear most, because if they can destabilise the Stokes part of all this, then everything else falls apart.
I have nothing but respect for what Bryden Cast has done in international cricket. But if I was an international top-level batter, I'd be like, if that's their best bowler, we've got a chance.
Hello and welcome to Following On. I'm talkSPORT cricket editor John Norman, and alongside Steve Harmison, double Ashes winner. Not sure if you know that he's a double Ashes winner or not by now. And also the broadcaster, historian and wildcat, Jared Kimber. For the next hour or so, we're going to be talking about the big cricket stories. We're going to talk about Jofra Archer. We're going to talk about ICC takeovers. We're going to be looking ahead to the Ashes. We're going to be looking ahead to England against India. We're going to be talking about Pakistani cricket and a whole lot more. So thanks for joining us here on Following On. Guys, a new studio for us for 1 week only. Where should we start? First off, the IPL, what do we now? We're a week in. Obviously, there's been some high scoring, there's been some six hitting, there's been some pretty poor bowling displays, or rather, bowling averages. I want to start off this week's show by talking about Jofra Archer. So Jofra came back into the England setup just before Christmas, didn't he, in the white ball stuff. And he's spent, as we all know, quite a spell on the sidelines, his elbow injuries. And we haven't really seen the best of him for a number of years. Haven't seen him in red ball cricket for, 5 years? He has played IPL, and he has come in and out on occasion for England in that time. But after his introduction back for England, there was, I'd say, a couple of whispers. Would you say that was fair? A few people watched his return, and nobody is going on air to talk about it or write about it, but there was a feeling that maybe he hadn't come back quite as strongly as maybe people had hoped. And then, of course, England embarked on a pretty poor Champions Trophy, T20 World Cup as well, and then rocks up, first match of the IPL, and he gets absolutely hammered. Not the first, not the last, to have that done to them. So where are we? Those whispers surrounding Jofra Archer and his return to international cricket, and also, the IPL, have now become louder. People are writing about it now. There is a fear that possibly the injuries that have afflicted him over the last few years might have taken something away from his game that might not come back. But as a former fast bowler, and as someone, Jared, who watches a lot of IPL cricket and a lot of white ball cricket, where are we now with Jofra?
So I want to ask Harmy a couple of things. So the first one is that we know he had a hyperextension on his arm, right? And where is the injury?
In his arm, right.
Right in the middle of that hyperextension, because it's the elbow that hyperextends, right? So if he can no longer hyperextend his arm, he's lost a percentage off his best bowling. I think we can agree with that, right?
Yeah.
That might come back, but at the moment, that's it. The other thing is that there are two kinds of players who get injuries in their elbows, or two kinds of bowlers, very fast bowlers and off spinners. The second great delivery he had was the off-cutters and the slower balls, right? If he can't get the revolutions that he used to get on the ball, and that is also elevated. And you watch his slower balls now, I'm not as worried about him at high pace, because there's a couple of times he bowled against India, I was like, ooh, he's bowling okay here. The minute he has to bowl slower balls now, it just looks like nothing happens. They just fizzle out of his hand. And he used to have 3 slower balls. He used to bowl the knuckleball occasionally, the back of the hand slow ball, but he wasn't good at them. But he was just using those as a variation for the cutter, right? The cutter now, all due respect to the great man Steve Harmison, he looks a little bit like your slower ball, where I'm just a little bit like, other than Michael Clark, there's no one in the world that can't play this slower ball, right? And that means he's got nothing else to go back to, and he also maybe has 2 or 3 miles an hour just back from where he was, and it looks like he's lost that snap off his wrist as well. And I don't know if that's to do with the elbow, but that's my question to you. If he's lost, let's say, 2 miles per hour off his high-end pace, if he can't get the rotation he used to on his cutter and he doesn't get the same snap, he was a bounce bowler who bowled really fast, who had a great off-cutter. Those are his 3 main tools that all seem to be nullified by one injury.
Yeah, nullified by one injury, nullified by a long time out. I think what you're both saying are valid points. Am I worried about Jofra Archer in an England shirt? No. I think I look at his pace. And the reason why I say no is because he's been out for so long. I think there's a little bit of confidence dented by coming back into white ball cricket. The problem you've got with somebody like Jofra is everybody wants him because he's that good. I think
You mean batters want him? They want his badge?
Well, no.
Or every team
wants him.
Yeah.
Right.
So the hardest part I said this many times to me and Manners, many times on following on. The ideal preparation would be to gradually come through a couple of games for Horsham, a game in the Sussex, 2 or 3 games in the Sussex second team, find his way through, 2 or 3 first-class games in the second division, and he finds his way into a rhythm of snap, a rhythm of pace, of swinging it, pitching it up, confidence. He's been out for so long, we bring him back into an environment where everybody just wants to whack him out of the park. And I think because of that, I think he's confidence. Bowling is about feel. Bowling is very much about confidence. I looked at Joff in the Wankhede when he got belted in the T20 game when India belted him, and even I didn't see all of it the other day when he got hit for 76, but I seen some of it. I thought he bowled about 2 or 3 bad balls. He bowled a full toss at the end of the first over.
The head high full toss.
Head high full toss, which then that's a knock-on effect. All these are a little bit of crisis confidence. I'm not worried about him in an England shirt because by the time he comes back from the IPL, he's got overs under his belt. When he comes into the England shirt, he comes in as a white shirt, not a red, with a red ball, not a white ball, and he comes in, and I think he'd be allowed some rhythm. So I don't think we'll see the best of Jofra Archer until halfway through the summer, because once he starts putting overs under his belt, getting himself together, getting the ball to swing away, coming back in, I think the crisis of confidence, of execution, of ripping down a side of it, or
you don't think it's the elbow?
I think it's a bit of
You
everything.
see what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying, and I think you're right. I think you're 100% right.
But you think he will work through that?
I think at this moment in time, I think he might be a little bit apprehensive, and I think the reason why, I think the anxiety with Jofra of trying to get with the elbow and having the injury, can I do it? Can I do it on a consistent basis? Can I rip down the side of it?
Yeah.
Am I going to hurt it?
Yeah.
All this, while somebody 22 yards away is trying to hit him 360 degrees around a stadium which has got 65,000 people, and it's red hot, and he's in the IPL or he's in the Champions Trophy.
And he played against India before that as well.
That
was the same guys coming at him. So I could get all that.
The crisis, I think there might be a little bit of a confidence issue with Jofra.
This is interesting because you are a proper fast bowler, and I know he's a slightly different kind of fast bowler, but you look at Anrik Nortje went through this. Anrik Nortje was the best bowler in the IPL basically one year, and then the next year was going at 12.
He got found out because he didn't have a slower ball. Proper slower ball.
But what we're seeing with Anrik Nortje, then Lockie Ferguson went through this as well. If you're bowling at 90 miles an hour, these kids don't seem as afraid of 90 miles an hour as they used to be.
Especially if they're straight up and down.
So if you get to 94, 95, you step back up. The minute Lockie Ferguson and Anrik Nortje have just got that little bit slower, and they're not quite the same kind of bowler as Jofra. They're a little bit less skillful and everything else.
What have them 2 bowlers had? In recent times, what have they had?
They've had injuries.
Big injuries.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
The bowler comes back.
So that's what I'm basically what I'm asking you is we rush these fast bowlers back in, and they're not ready and they're not confident, and quite often they are playing in major games. Like I think Anrik Nortje has made 2 comebacks for the IPL, and Lockie made a big comeback for an IPL tournament at one stage as well. So we're rushing them back in, trying to get them back in, and they're 2 or 3% down. I think when the IPL started, if you were a 90-mile-an-hour bowler and you were 2 or 3% down, you were probably okay, because there's a lot of young kids out there going, oh my God, how do I face this? Those young Indian kids now, they get those throwdown bowlers, just ping the ball at them. They're not afraid, and they're used to facing those bowlers. So I think now you almost have to be at your peak pace. And I think that is probably what Jofra is just not at.
And and to sort of go on to that, it's like, it's hard to sort of, because he's only had one game, but I looked at it and thought, you know what? At the start of this IPL, I wouldn't give you $500,000 for Jofra. I want him, but I wouldn't give you $500,000 for him. If the IPL's after the India Test series and Jofra plays 3 or 4 Test matches in that series, I'd give you $10 million for him. Because he'd be a different bowler, he'll have a different feel, he'll have a different level of confidence. He will be bowling at 90 to 93 mile an hour. He will have confidence of being able to rip down the side of it. His decision making will be better because you'll have more volume under him. So all that is. And that's why I keep on saying I'm not worried about him playing for England, and I really don't care about him IPL. I love the guy to bits. I want him to be playing cricket because of what he's gone through. But I think what you've got to. I've always said this about cricket is about feel, and fast bowling. I mean, it's not an exact science. It's not done by a robot. It's not a bowling machine where it just goes bang and there you are. I look at somewhere like Kigisa Rabada and Jasprit Bumrah, and you see their disciplines of variation and the way they can nail it. Jofra's every bit as good as them. I just think at this moment in time, because of the injuries and the layoffs he's had, I don't think he's executing them as well as he probably was before when he first burst onto the scene. And I think that's just down to we haven't rushed him back because everybody wants him, but he comes back into an environment where the ball's going everywhere, and all of a sudden his shoulders are slumping, and he's at it, and he looks as though he hasn't got a care in the world. He looks as though he's nice and laid back. The gold chain, the watch, everything. I tell you what, when you're a bowler in that situation and you're not as confident at letting go of the thing, no matter what you give off externally, internally, everything's going round in the head. Everything is. And I think that is, unfortunately, what's happening with Jofra. The more you bowl, the better he'll become. I just think a period in the summer with the red ball bowling for a while will be very good.
Let me just stop you, because is he going to be playing any red ball cricket? So we talk about we want to throw them back in, but it was Jofra who threw himself back in.
Oh yeah.
Right. Now, when Jofra's bowling for England, who's he got around him? From a bowling perspective, who's, as you expertly described, the process of coming back from injury and dealing with lack of confidence, as well as the technical and tactical side of bowling. Who's he got round him at Sussex? He would have James Kirtley. Right.
Yeah.
So who's he got at England?
Jimmy Anderson.
Right. So who's he got in the IPL?
It's a dog-eat-dog world. Nobody.
Well, he'll have a bowling coach.
He'll have a bowling coach, but the bowling coach is there. The bowling coach is in. I mean, the coaches in the IPL are not.
Who's Rajasthan's bowling coach?
So there's that, right?
Yeah.
So Jofra's chosen.
They're there for him.
Rightly or wrongly, right?
They're there for him. The coaches in the IPL, a lot are there for him. Kevin Peterson's not a technical coach; he's a coach of a batter.
So there's that side of things. The other thing is, you talk about increasing your workload, but he's bowling 4 overs every 4 days.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
3 or 4 days. Yeah.
So he's not really increasing his workload to a point where at the end of the IPL you're going to say, there's a guy that's ready to play Test cricket, is he?
No, but you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. He might have a red ball out there with him in between time because of England's sort of rehabilitation back into the game. He might be bowling, instead of in practice, he might be bowling 4 overs with a white ball, but he might be bowling another 5 or 6 overs with a red ball, just to get his volume up. We don't know that, and I expect that's happening. So we can't just say, he's having a jolly, he's out in the IPL.
No, nobody's suggesting that the IPL is a jolly.
But
he didn't look like he was having a jolly in the first game.
From a 4 over point of view, I mean by that, he's just out there having 4 overs, having a good time, balls going everywhere. But I think I would imagine, knowing the ECB's bowling unit, Neil Killeen, who I was with last night, actually should have asked him. It wouldn't surprise me if Jofra's volume is up day by day by day. You see these lads now, we go on tour and we follow them. We were out in New Zealand, and you see them running around the field. We've seen them.
Yeah, we know that happens with England on England duty.
But you can't get away from it now. You've got these vests on.
Yeah, they get measured.
So you get measured everywhere. You get out of bed in the morning, you know how far you've gone. Every single minute of the day. So England will be monitoring that, and that wouldn't surprise me if Jofra's volume is getting more and more up. It'll be interesting to see how he gets into red ball cricket in the summer. Whether you were saying whether he plays red ball cricket or not.
Well, he won't have time to, will he? Because by the time the IPL's over,
He's centrally
it'll
contracted.
be blast time.
He's centrally contracted. I mean, he'd be centrally contracted.
I know who the bowling coach is at Rajasthan. It's a man that bowled even faster than Jofra Archer and was even more injured, sadly. Shane Bond.
I thought you were going to say
Bond,
Sean
yeah.
Tate, who also could have been, who also could have fitted that.
Could have been.
I mean, Shane Bond's probably a good person for him.
Yeah.
I mean, a good person and a really worrying person to have there and be like, you could have been great and you didn't quite do it. Just on the red ball thing, I actually think, having watched him now bowl in, 5 or 6 games for England over, a little while, and the IPL, I don't think he'll have as many issues in Test cricket. Like, I think he could go back and still be really good at Test cricket. His issues look really white ball dependent at the moment. As I said, he just has no variation, and he doesn't have the same snap that when he just needs to... What Bumrah does, right? Well, Bumrah just, whips his wrist down a little bit more.
Confidence.
And can skid one through, and Jofra does the other.
To
Huge
take
amount
us
of
right back
confidence.
to the start,
Huge amount of confidence.
very simply, because the points Jared made are brilliant.
Yeah.
Do you think insert, the amount of time it takes for confidence and the body to heal, do you think that snap, the hyperextension, the ability to blow to bowl that cutter in the way that we used to see, will that be back?
Yeah. The snap might not be back. The hyperextension snap might not be back, but I don't think that's going to affect the fact that he can bowl at 90 odd mile an hour. I think his confidence of letting go of the off cutter or the slower ball, the execution, I think that is suffering because he's in the cauldron of what is really, really difficult cricket, i.e. Champions Trophy, India away, and obviously the IPL. So that there, for me, is where he's at this moment in time. I think a longer period where he's bowling more volume, I think that snap comes back, his confidence comes back, and he'll be back to terrorising people in, I think, middle of the summer. By the end of the summer, we might get Jofra 95% to where he was before he got injured. And we've got to remember, this kid has been out for 3 or 4 years, and nobody comes back like that in 3 or 4 years, especially a fast bowler.
One last question. If Jofra was to play one test match against India this summer, what ground would you want to see him play at?
First one. Sets a tone.
Forget setting the tone. I'm talking about the pitch.
Pitch. Oh, well, Leeds possibly first. To be fair,
Well, that is the first one, isn't it?
He takes the pitch. Sometimes he can take. Jofra can take the pitch out of the equation. So no matter what pitches you play on, the short ball was going to be really, really effective. And he's obviously the quick pierce through the air.
When he took the wickets at Leeds, he actually bowled a lot slower, didn't he, in UC conditions? I kind of feel like you can get someone else to do that.
Yeah.
So you probably prefer him on one of the harder, flatter surfaces.
I expect him to play more than one Test match.
Yeah.
I expect him to play more than one Test match. I would have said Manchester of old, but Manchester's not the old Old Trafford that I played on. Where's the other ones? You've got Edgbaston. Edgbaston will be flat. It'll be flat. So that might be where you think, right, where we introduce him, and then we see how he goes. But if he's fit, he's got his volume up. I mean, first Test match at Leeds, you set him away down the hill, and you really try and put India under pressure literally from the first Test match. One thing I wouldn't like to see, because at this minute in time, I think what Jofra's doing, and in something else that we sort of a technical thing that we've talked about, but a game situation which he's had over the course, and a point which I think is quite valid, over the course of the last however many months he's been back, the teams he's been playing have struggled for runs. So when you're struggling for runs as a fast bowler and a strike bowler, you then have to risk that little bit more. You have to go that little bit fuller because you need the wicket. You have to bowl that possibly a little bit shorter because you need the wicket.
I was also going to ask about the bowlers he's bowling with.
Yeah.
And also the batters. Like, he's gone up against, like, a bunch of Indian batters.
Absolutely.
He was in the Champions Trophy as well against good batting lineups, like, when he had to go up against Australia. And then he was at, Sunrisers that smashed him everywhere? Yeah. Like, okay, like, at a certain point...
In Hyderabad as well.
I would like to see him against, some of the lesser, batting lineups. And again, as you said, it's like he's been dropped back in and, maybe it's slightly different if we see him.
Just don't want him to play catch-up in the summer. So if you're going to get him ready for the first Test.
You said you wanted him playing for Horsham. Is that right?
No. We're talking about the
I'm
ideal.
just saying, there's a lot of people around the Horsham area who play club cricket who are like,
No thanks.
No, Jofra. I don't care if his elbow is 7% worse than it used to be or 80% worse.
But in bygone years, you would have your rehabilitation at the game would have gone slowly. But because it's Jofra Archer, Mark Wood's exactly the same.
Yeah,
it's bang.
And that's what I was saying before about Alric Nokia and Lockie Ferguson. And like, I actually think the future of the IPL is having like 3 fast bowlers on your list and just going, whoever's physically healthy plays, and the other 2 would just hope that they get healthy if this guy gets injured.
We'll get them healthy.
Yeah.
But I don't want them to play catch up.
Yeah.
No, that's the big point. Don't play catch up. If you can get him ready for the first test, play him and get him ready for play the first test. Because if you lose the first test, then he comes back in, and there's even more pressure. The great saviour's back, Jofra, and then he's under pressure himself. He puts himself under pressure. England put him under pressure. If we can get him ready for the first test match and he can go out there and set the tone, and whatever England win or lose, our best team is out there. And I think that would be really, really important for Jofra to kick on for the summer.
Okay, plenty more to discuss on the show. You're listening or joining us on Following On. Coming up after the break, we're going to talk about how do you overthrow the ICC? You're listening or watching Following On with myself, John Norman, Jarrod Kimber and Steve Harmison. We've spoken about Jofra Archer on the show so far this week. Now I want to talk about the ICC. Usman Samiuddin in Cricinfo, Mike Atherton in The Times, Jarrod Kimber numerous times on his own YouTube channel.
Good areas.
Good areas.
Don't plug them and not plug me.
Well, I know that you're going to plug yourself. So the World Cricketers Association have come out and essentially said what we have been saying for a long, long time, that the game has no leadership on an international level, and we know that. How many times do you have to read an article about the ICC where it's described as essentially an events management company? I mean, that's
what it is.
That's what it is. That's how it's. I don't even know.
It's supposed to be as well.
And to be honest with you, it's the essentially bit that I am now, pulling up. We all know that.
Yeah.
Right. That is where we're at. You only have to go back to the situation involving Afghanistan and the calls from government, at government level in at least 2 different countries, coming very shortly after Australia had basically decided not to play them in bilaterals. This is the question of whether Afghanistan should play international cricket is a subject that we should hear the ICC give their take on.
I'll go further. When they brought Afghanistan in, and Afghanistan had to have a women's team, and Afghanistan said, we have a women's team, and it was a training squad, right? And everyone was like, okay, we could see them training or whatever. And then the Taliban came in, and of course the training squad all left the country, and they all live in Queensland and New South Wales now, wherever they've gone to. And so we said, okay, well, you said that Afghanistan could only have them get their status and their money if they had a women's side. They no longer have a women's side. So the easy decision as an organisation at that stage is to say, well, half the money is going to this independent team that has now fled the country, and the other half can go to the men. But there is no one who runs the game who is willing to do that.
And we spoke about this, didn't we, with Bumble, David Lloyd, 6 months ago. And we put all these ideas forward. You've written about it in the last 24 hours or so. Essentially, nobody runs world cricket, correct?
Yeah.
I think one of the stipulants within ICC governance is that no country should be allowed to have any links to the government.
Yeah, no government interference.
No government interference, which is an absolute joke.
Well, this one is Sri Lanka, right? The Sri Lankan sports minister has to sign off the men's squad.
Right.
I don't think you can get much more interfering than that. Like Imran Khan's in the background going, geez, even though I didn't do that.
So the question I want to ask you two is, how does a sport go about overthrowing its own governing body? How could that happen?
Well, they take their executives away, surely. The ICC board is made up of
the other boards.
The other boards. It's members. It's an events management company and a members club.
It's an events management company run by its own members.
Yeah. Right.
But if the own members take themselves away from it,
right. So that's not going to happen, right? Is that going to happen?
Probably not. No, but
No, is
if
it?
they've got, is it a,
What is it?
well, like a vote? Could you have a vote of no confidence in the ICC?
So that could
all
happen.
Then they all step back.
Yeah.
And then it's not so much overthrowing the ICC. It's changing the model the way it is. Because at the minute, you're right. There's no leadership. They need to try and find a window where franchise and international cricket can survive. So that's in the best interest of the the member states to come together and find that. The ICC want their tournaments. So I'm sure if you get adults in the room and go like that, it comes down to leadership. And if the leadership at the top is not willing to stand up to these franchise owners, then all of a sudden you've got what you've got now. I mean, cricket's in such a dark place, I think, from an administration point of view. I'm not sure where it goes. I really worry about cricket on that front.
Well, okay. So would it be a fair statement to make that the ICC are never going to change things on their own accord?
Yeah. Unless we got some fluke where Brazil, Japan and America get really strong in cricket and there's a more of an equal footing between 5 or 6 nations.
Does that come with the Olympics?
It could, but we're still talking 25 years,
And
right?
and it
won't.
So,
Yeah.
So to my mind, there are two main ways that effective, radical, and long-standing change can come about. There's the players, and there's two. That country isn't necessarily in Brazil or Japan. It's Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
So they are the two ways, right? The players essentially try and wrest control back, Kerry Packer style to a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It won't. Yeah.
Yeah. But to do that, of course, they need the other thing to happen, right? They need a country or a wealth fund or just a ridiculously rich individual to come in and basically pay them to leave.
Yeah.
They are the only two ways that I can see. Is there any other ways that you can see?
I don't think the players or the Saudis are holding the cards. I think the people who are holding the cards at the moment are essentially the IPL owners. Mm-hmm. And I think it's one particular group, and that's the Ambani family. They are in partnership with the Saudis already. They have great relationships with the players. Players love playing for Mumbai and Cape Town and New York. Like, they really do. I'm not saying that as a flippant thing because they pay them a lot of money. I mean, they legitimately like the way they're looked after. Mumbai Indians used to have their own special jeans made up for the players, and you always saw the players wearing them, even when they weren't with the team. Weird things like that really mattered.
I'd love to get a pair of those jeans.
I still want the white jackets of the Champions Trophy losers. Wherever those go.
In England, white jackets bring to mind the Liverpool team of 1996.
Robbie Fowler, Jimmy Redknapp, Stan Collingwood.
Yeah, they were called the Spice Boys.
This is the most talkSPORT you've ever sounded on one of our cricket shows. Yeah,
it's just a cultural difference. Yeah.
So the Ambani family has just bought Cricinfo. They're now broadcasting cricket. They own a share of FanCode. They own which is the Indian streaming platform. Yeah. They own a share of Dream 11. I don't know how big these shares are. I hear varying things.
They own 49% of the Oval Invincibles.
They own the Oval Invincibles.
And from what I hear, the ECB were very, very keen on the Ambani family being involved in the 100, and that would make sense.
I think the Ambani family were the ones who really might have pushed the ECB even to getting to that point because they were so keen to be involved. Yeah. And on top of that, as I said, through their Geo network, they have this relationship with the Saudis. They literally run their company with Saudi Arabia already. So Geo/Reliance, however you want to look at it, which is the Ambani family, is involved in cricket and is involved in Saudi Arabia. I think that's the missing link. And a lot of people are saying things like rebel leagues. There is a possibility, I don't know how big this is, but there is a possibility that the Ambanis go, why do we have to be involved with the Indian government? Why do we have to be involved with the BCCI? Why do we have to be involved with the ICC? We can just buy cricket, run our own World Cups, run the IPL, run a league in Saudi Arabia, and do that. There's all these weird little things. When that article first came out, and I know you guys would have read it really closely, one of the things was it was like $500 million. Yeah. Well, $500 million. The last Rebel League was like $4 billion, right? So that's no money. And then
made a point, because of course we have seen this play out in golf, in tennis.
That's the worry.
And in boxing, right?
That's the worry.
But in all of those sports, they've kind of gone think about things in different ways, but the same way. But as you may mention, 500 million is about 3 golfers.
Yeah.
It's not that much money, right?
It's when the Rebel League came in 2014, the one that ZTV and Lalit Modi and others were involved with, the deal that I heard was $50 million to David Warner for over, I don't know how many years that was, but $50 million up front, come and play with us in this Rebel League. Well, they can't do that with 500 million, right? So it's not a Rebel League.
No.
So that's what I think. That's the people are like, oh, it's Kerry Packer or it's the ICL, and I'm like, I don't think it is. I think it's something different, and that's why all these things are happening at the same time. So the first thing we get, Harmy, is a week and a half ago we get the leak, and Chris Barrett writes up his story. Dan Brettig has followed it up. So the Age is all over this. They've got very good contacts within the Players Union, and then a week and a half later we have the Players Union release a report that they want everyone to read about, and that report would have. If the Saudis hadn't come out a week and a half before, that report would have got about 10% the interest that it's got.
Yeah.
So my guess is that there's a leak there. So the players are on one side. The Saudis are so involved with cricket. I don't think people understand how involved with cricket they are at the moment. They had the IPL auction. They sponsor I think Aramco and the Saudi Wealth Fund both fund. No, sorry, Visit Saudi both fund the sponsor the ICC. They've got a deal with DAZN, which means they have a deal with Cricket Australia. I'm pretty sure for a fact they've been speaking to other cricket boards in the last 2 or 3 months as well.
By the way, DAZN have just bought Foxtel.
Yeah, so even more involved with
in Australia.
Yeah, so the Saudis are already really involved, and then you've got this other thing, as I said before. You've got these people who own all these products in cricket already, and they are, and you listen to their CEO Uday Shankar. I think he's the CEO. He's certainly involved with that whole setup. He certainly has been involved before as well, and used to run Star. And he's saying things like, "This might be the last ever ICC board," or suggesting it should be the last ever ICC board. I think if the takeover is going to come, it will be from within cricket, but with the backing of Saudi Arabia. So I don't think Saudi Arabia want to do what they did with golf, because they spent a lot of money and everyone ended up slagging them off forever, right?
And they slag each other off, which is not great for
and if they wanted to spend the money, so we know that the Saudi Wealth Fund tried to buy, was it 25% or 15% of the IPL for $5 billion and were rebuffed, right? So the BCCI obviously said, push them aside. The next way to get in that situation is through the owners. So then what you would have, my guess, is the IPL becomes, let's say, a 4 to 5 month league tournament. You have your World Cups, but run through the private league style that we currently have. And then you have some international cricket probably played between Australia, England, South Africa and India, right, at the top level. And then maybe you have tiers below that continue to play each other as feeder leagues. And maybe there's no money that goes to them and they just have to deal with it themselves. But that is... I wish I could give you more information, but these are the things that I'm being told.
There's something else as well, because, if... what's it called? Riyadh season? What is the big boxing event that they've completely revolutionised boxing? Yeah. Insofar that top boxers would avoid each other for years,
and now the fight,
and then they would, and then essentially that they would either fight, one would lose, and then the fight wouldn't happen. Blah blah blah. Now you've got all the best boxers fighting all the time
on the same
night. Yeah. I mean, it's extraordinary, but there is something that people forget in all this. People will turn up to watch these fights in Saudi Arabia, right? So there is some murmuring about the atmosphere, because at times there's obviously no alcohol and all the rest. We know what happened within, when you go to a boxing match, the atmosphere is raucous, it's righteous. That doesn't happen in Saudi Arabia. But the spectacle of the best fighting the best every week, you can't beat that, right? So you've got that side of things.
So you're worried that people won't turn up to cricket?
No, this is the whole point, right? This is what I couldn't quite work out. So boxing works in Saudi. Football works in Saudi. Mm-hmm. Some of these bigger teams get big crowds, right? Sport means nothing if there's nobody there to watch it. We know that. Golf hasn't really worked as far as I can see, because they haven't tried to play it all in Saudi Arabia. There's still the live tour is all around the world, right? But that's still asking people to go to this other tournament where, if you're a golf fanatic and you want to see some of these golfers because you love golf and you can't see them on the PGA, you might go along, but it's a bit of a problem. And the tennis they've just bought in on, it's existing and they've just rebadged it. Cricket. So the question I was asking myself about cricket was, well, okay, let's say they throw £5 billion at it and David Warner signs that £50 million £15 million sponsorship deal. If you play cricket in Saudi Arabia, who's going to watch it?
So there's about 4 million subcontinental people in Saudi Arabia.
Are they going to? Are they? Yeah, but what?
But
jobs
Are they buying it to play in Saudi Arabia, or are they buying it to play?
Well,
Well,
that's
the issue.
But
So I
that's
think
where
they-
what Jared is saying makes more
Yeah.
sense.
I just
because
don't
it's
think-
not about saying we're going to create this tournament that's going to take place in Saudi Arabia. Look at us. Well, it isn't that.
we're gonna
What it
buy
is. And this is where the Ambanis will realise as well. There's no point playing this cricket outside of India.
No.
I mean, on occasion, yes.
I think what
but
they'll do is
you need your fans.
I think if they make the IPL the major thing, and they have whatever we want to call their version of a World Cup is, right? But let's just call it the World Cup for now. That will travel around, right?
Yeah.
But obviously, we know. Well, what may not go to England because, from what I can tell, the ECB is the only board that hasn't talked to Saudi Arabia at this point. But it'll travel around a little bit. But I think what they'll do is they'll have one major IPL. The normal IPL will be in India, and then there will be something like the Champions League.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I'm calling it the Saudi Slam, but I'm looking for a percentage of that if they end up using it. But there will be something that they will have for 2, 3, 4 weeks that will be a major reason for everyone to come to Saudi Arabia. They won't want to put all that money in if you don't do that. But if they're going to have their name on everything else, I don't think they care. And if you look at was it last year or the year before? Almost everything in the background just said Visit Saudi in the back of the IPL. If they can do that for all cricket that they're involved with, and it's the major cricket, that's what they want. One of the things that the Saudi government is very interested in is Indian tourists coming to Saudi Arabia, right? And if you think about it from that point of view, a one-off great tournament where the Mumbai Cape Town team is there, and I don't know, the Melbourne Stars is there, and Manchester Originals are there. There's a reason for fans around the world to come to Saudi Arabia for that week, and then you have the 3-4 million local fans, hopefully.
There's a country missing out here. What do you do? What do you do then with one of the most passionate parts of, or the passionate areas of cricket in the world? What happens to Pakistan?
This is where it goes into geopolitics, Harmy, because traditionally...
You can't just ignore them.
No,
we can't
You
ignore
can.
them. We can't ignore them.
No, they have been.
Right.
You can, because they have been.
But
They
if,
have been
if
ignored
you're
by
investing that much money into cricket, that is
So how about
potentially a huge market
So
to
how about
overlook.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia puts on an India versus Pakistan
Which is another thing that...
Test match?
I mean... We know that the Saudis have been traditionally aligned with Pakistan, and over the last couple of years, there's been a movement towards Saudis having a better relationship with India, which is why all this is happening, right? Because those things are opening up. We know that the Saudis want more Indians to come over, but also we know that there has been some sort of conversation between the Saudis and the PCB or Pakistan cricket people in general, right? If I'm spending, and I'm thinking about myself as, a prince in Saudi Arabia at the moment, I'm thinking to myself, I want to make sure that India is the one I'm catering to, but do I really want to give up on 200 million people in Pakistan who absolutely love this sport and 300 million people in Bangladesh who love this sport, right? For potentially slightly more money from England with 55 million people. So I think there actually has to be a conversation at one stage of how they do that. Right? I think that's really fascinating. So what happens if India and Saudi Arabia split, right? One way or another here. I would assume that the next logical pivot is Pakistan and Bangladesh.
But then there's something will always come. You mentioned it before about governments getting involved this and governments getting involved that. There's a huge human right element, and
Yes.
that is something that will that is something that I'll report on Newcastle United. The takeover was the best thing that happened to my football club, but it's there.
Yeah.
And it would be is it arguably the first time that it's come into cricket being talked about at the level. If Saudi Arabia do come in, and how does then, you've been across cricket and you're across all format of sort of facets of cricket. How does cricket deal with that if Saudi Arabia come in? Because a lot of boards. Probably the biggest sport that governments are involved with the boards.
Yeah.
And governments obviously they swear left and right over elections and everything like that. The human right element will never go away.
Look, cricket's always weird, isn't it? Because the the reason we have the ICC is because it was the Imperial Cricket Conference, which was a political decision to start with. So we started with politics, right? In a way that other sports eventually got involved with it. You then have the fact that the Afghan men's team is rising up the ranks while there is a war with some of the countries involved with cricket that they have to play against, right? Like, it's not. I don't think cricket is as straightforward as even traditionally. And I know what you're saying. This is on a different level, right? It really is on a different level. But you look at someone like Pat Cummins. Pat Cummins has gone out of his way to say he's environmentally conscious and, he wants to be involved with ethical things and everything else. And yet it's his manager, Neil Maxwell, who's massively involved with this. The players, the administrators, the media, you and I, if this comes off, all three of us are going to get offers to go over there and do something, right? We have to, everyone is going to have to make those decisions. And I don't think outside of Indian and Pakistanis specifically, that has happened as much. There's little things like 1979 when Sri Lanka boycotted playing Israel, right? But it was a warm-up for a World Cup. It didn't matter. No one, I don't think it was even covered by mainstream press when it happened. So we have had little things like that before. We had, Stuart McGill and the England team in Zimbabwe. Yeah. This is so much bigger though, isn't it? Oh, yeah. But we have seen with the golfers, with the tennis players, with the footballers, you know what it's like, man. Oh, you have a 12-year career, you have to cash in.
Absolutely.
And as you know how poorly cricket media is paid as well. Like sweeping all this up, I think if the money is right, people are going to go with it very, very quickly. And there might be some people on the outside hurling bombs in from independent places. But I do think that when it comes down to it, cricket is a, $6-8 billion sport. And that money does not trickle down to the players, to the coaches, to the media, or anything else in the way that it should. This is probably a system where that could change. And I think a lot of people are going to be like, politics be damned. Saudi Arabia has a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay. You're listening to Following On. And very shortly, we are going to be talking about Pakistan and asking the question, has it ever been any worse for a cricketing culture and team that we have for many years been saying it's reached its nadir? Well, is this the nadir? You are listening to Following On. You're listening to Following On with myself, John Norman, Jared Kimber and Steve Harmison. Let's talk Pakistani cricket. Start with you, Jared. Has Pakistani cricket ever been in a worse place on field? Obviously, with the terrorist situation in 2009, off the field, it was in a horrendous, dark place. Didn't play in Pakistan for a decade. They're back, which is great. But
Do you count the match-fixing thing as on field or off field?
That's true.
Do you know what I mean?
I would say that. Well, there was the match-fixing stuff. There was obviously the terrorist attacks.
Yeah.
There was also the
ball tampering,
wasn't there? So there's three major negative stories that have affected Pakistani cricket. I mean, let's move those three to one side. Let's just talk about where they are as a cricketing nation in terms of performance, and whether it is and what needs to happen for it to turn around and get better, and also whether you think it ever will, when you consider that their players essentially aren't playing in a lot of these overseas tournaments anymore.
Yeah, it's very fair. I think the same thing is happening to Pakistan that happened to the West Indies, which is I don't think the talent has dried up. But in the old days, when the game was amateur, you didn't need to find every single last talented player around to be good. If you found a Wazam Akram or a Shoaib Akhtar or Inzamam Ul Haq, you could have a couple of other Ramiz Raja type players around and you could build a fairly good core, because it was an amateur sport in the 80s and 90s when the West Indies and Pakistan were probably the two best sides, right? Like until Australia take over, they were the two best sides. Ever since then, it's been a professional sport, right? And it's harder and harder to compete against professionals. So Pat Cummins and Shaheen Afridi. I'm a huge fan of both of them. I'm not sure that Pat Cummins is a better cricketer than Shaheen Afridi. Right, I think they're very similar levels.
Yeah, the natural talent, the natural talent of the West Indians and the natural talent of the Pakistanis, I think, supersede majority of the world from a natural talent. But brain cells, cricket brain cells, and
it's not even brain cells because
their structure is just off the charts the other way.
Yeah, because if you look at like George Headley and Javed Miandad and Clive Lloyd and Imran Khan, like they're genius cricket. Like they think about cricket in a way that others don't. Shahid Afridi was playing T20 cricket when we didn't even know that was the way to play the game, right? Like they're so far ahead of that. But the structure and the professionalism and the lack of professionalism and they're not understanding simple things like diets and rehab. And you look at Shaheen Afridi and you're like, why hasn't he? But he can bat. We've all seen him whack sixes before. Why isn't he just 10% better so you can get the odd Pat Cummins-like innings out of him? And how did Pat Cummins get really good at batting? He basically spent 6 years in the nets. Every time he was injured, Pat Cummins was in the nets getting better. And Shaheen Afridi, when he's injured, they're trying to push him back into the side all the time. So you're not...
Or they're taking him out the side.
Yeah. Well, as well.
And he ends up playing in a domestic tournament in, Canada when he should be playing for Pakistan in an international.
Pakistanis are quickly to throw each other under the bus, like you'd not believe. I've always said, Jared, I've always believed that cricket is an individual sport played by a team.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, and if you want to throw the West Indies into this, the West Indies and Pakistan are individuals playing as individuals. I don't think team comes into... Yeah, I don't think they know how to play as a unit.
No, but why is that? Because it can't be cultural.
I think it's leadership. I mean, it's their style off the field.
I think off the field is
the problem. The problem I've got with Pakistan is, which you mentioned, I've got a question here, and I've got no. And I actually think the question can go even further, and it's like, well, has Pakistan ever been consistently in a good place over the course of the day? Because I think under Mickey Arthur, possibly he had a little bit of structure over 4 or 5 years.
That's kind of what Jared's saying.
It comes to leadership.
Yeah, it comes down to professionalism.
Yeah.
So you could say the same thing you just said about individuals playing about the England team in the 90s, 80s and 90s, right? And this is the time before English cricket became professional. It's the same thing. If you have a dysfunctional, everybody's got to look after themselves because, it's a run on cliques and it's short-termism and it's not professional and I've got to make my own way to the ground. And then who is my boss here?
Yeah.
All of that kind of stuff. This was all taken out of English cricket. Overnight, and it's the same's happened in India. Remember when all the talk about India was, they can't field?
Yeah, or the different cliques within, you're from Kolkata or you're from Mumbai, and a lot of that is just disappearing because the most talented players are coming through because of the system, right? And you look at, I remember when Babar Azam lost his form. So I did that big piece about how he changed his trigger movements and it caused some issues for him and everything. And so all of his friends started contact, and I'm talking about former players and coaches, and they're like, he doesn't trust anyone to fix it. Because every year or so, there's a new coach, there's a new selector, there's a new PCB chair, right? There's a new batting coach.
Well, if you've read Gideon's book with Wazim, it's 250, 300 pages, right? And if you think that there is anything more dizzying than the governance of Pakistani cricket, well, just wait till you find out how many different competitions they played back in those days. It was just you can see why match fixing started. It didn't even start then. Continue. It was one irrelevant tournament after another. They must have played 12 different series a year, and they probably had 3 different PCB chairmen a year, two different captains. And then if you're injured, you're forgotten about, and then you come back after a year and a half. Going back to the point you made though, and I think this is absolutely key. It's not just Shaheen Afridi. There's a long list of bowlers. Naseem Shah, for instance, when he came in, it was
he is the next Pat Cummins, right?
And then suddenly it's like, why are these guys suddenly bowling at 82 miles an hour? Why are they so inconsistent?
Why can't they field?
Well,
do you know what I mean? Like at a certain point, remember '96 World Cup was me and Sid Monga from Cricinfo, and we decided to take stats. We wanted to see if the CricViz stats sort of matched our feeling on fielding, right? And we were watching them. And we were going, the ball went up in the air, and there was someone at fine leg, and there's someone at deep backward square, and it landed between both of them, and they both turned around and looked at each other. And I was thinking, any other team in the world at least is running
they're running each other.
Or having a conversation. But these two didn't even move. The ball just landed 5 meters in from the boundary at maybe a backward square sort of area. And they both looked at each other and go, I thought you were going to do it. And you watched them field with their feet. Right? And all these sorts of things. Naseem Shah can bat. Shaheen Afridi can bat. But they're not Mitchell Starc and Pat Cummins, are they? They're not, they're not even Mark Wood type players. They're beneath that with the talent. You've got to work on every single level. And I've said so many times that all you need to do in Pakistan cricket is forget about the coaches, forget about the selectors and all that sort of stuff. Make sure every single kid who comes through between the age of 15 and 19 understands what being a professional is. And within 10 years, you'll be back to where you should be because they will grow up. But they come into this amateur system where they know that whoever is in charge of them today, like an 18-year-old kid in Pakistan knows whoever is in charge of them today, a month from now, will be starting their own YouTube page moaning about their bosses. Like, that's literally what happens over and over again, right? Like, you just watch former Pakistani players, their head selector, a week later, they've got their own podcast. It's like, well, what is the point?
But you talk about it there, you're right, you're absolutely spot on. But when it comes to structure and coaching and everything that comes with it, these kids aren't taught. A little bit, you're talking about cricket in the 80s and 90s in England. It was an former old fellow from MCC who wrote 12 letters and said, "You come and play." You had a few. Yeah. If you had a few hits, you bowled a few, he bowled a few. He sat there, had his gin and tonics, and that was the way the world was. I still think that's in Pakistan. Yeah. I think the people in Pakistan don't know how. As this passionate game of cricket that everybody loves, there's no structure to how to teach people how to play cricket because it's pompous old men who have been very good at the game and just stand there and go, "Well, I've got a tracksuit and I'm in charge at the top of the net and you bowl." Yeah. They don't tell them how to bowl. Don't tell them how to field. Don't tell them how to bat. So there's no structure. So it's the respect your elders, because that part of the world, you respect the people above you. And it just seems that every single time that Pakistan gets some sort of consistency of their cricket, then, like you say, somebody comes out of the woodwork with a little bit of power and goes, "Right, I'm in charge now. I'm taking over. I'm in charge now. And once I'm in charge, and once it goes awry, somebody else will go, "Right, I'm in charge now," and he goes
the whole Mickey Arthur thing.
The whole Mickey Arthur thing.
We were,
and that's probably the most.
Were you commentating with him when he was with talkSPORT? Do you remember?
I reckon that's probably the most consistent it's been since probably Imran had it.
Yeah. The first Mickey Arthur one.
The first one.
But the second one when he was asked to do the job, but he was still coaching Derby, right? Like, he wasn't going to commit to that. And I'm saying this this is not Mickey confirming it, but this is just a normal human being understanding what he did, right? He wasn't going to take that job because he knew that when the chairman changed, he was going to be out again and he wouldn't be able to go back to Derby because they would have replaced him.
Look what happened with Jason Gillespie.
Oh my God.
I mean,
and Gary Kirsten.
Yeah.
Look at all the money they spent on those coaches and then they just completely chopped them off. But I just want to get...
Because they were going to do something that wasn't... It was the right thing from the rest of the world's point of view. Yeah, two coaches coming in to coach, where people were like from the outside, or from the inside, going, "Well, that's not the way we do it. I mean, I'm such and such. I've played at this level. I'm on top of this board. You're out. Akib Javed comes in, he gets his mates in, and then that's like 45 times that's happened.
Oh, and then he's going to be out, and it's the next one.
That's why it's a bad role.
I was watching the Champions Trophy. How many bad fielding teams do you think there are in the world now? There really aren't fielding teams there are fielding teams who fumble a little bit more, but you watch teams like Bangladesh and India who were famous for not being particularly good at fielding. You have a couple of players, I mean, Afghanistan have a couple of donkeys that they need to hide in the field. India had a couple of donkeys in at the moment that they have to hide in the field. But generally, fielding standards are so high right across the world. There's Pakistanis from 1970 through to now. They've always been athletic. Right? They can move around. Athleticism isn't the problem. But their fielding skills are so low compared to the other teams.
Because they're so low compared to their batting natural ability and their bowling natural ability, which is weird.
Yeah, and so you just look at that and you go, you almost want Pakistan cricket to be like, what if we were good at fielding, right? And we just looked at that as something to do. And then we could find the guy who bowls at 93 miles an hour and the guy who bowls mystery spin and the guy who hits sixes over his head and all that sort of stuff. But they're not thinking about cricket the way that everyone else has been thinking about cricket, right? Which is, let's get better step by step. Let's bring in the odd overseas coach. But we don't always have to have overseas coaches. But what are the other teams doing? When we went and played in that overseas league, what was the thinking behind there when we played in that league? What happened when we were in county cricket? What were they testing in county cricket that we can bring back? You go back to Pakistan, and as Harmy said, someone comes in and they bring their friends in. That person goes, and the new person comes in and he brings his friends in.
Who've got no qualifications.
And so even when you have them with qualifications, they've got a completely different system from the last one, from the next one. It needs an 8-year plan in a country that has trouble looking at 8 months ahead, right?
Which would benefit from a coaching structure that coaches to coach kids from 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old. That 8-year plan, that 11-year-old, once he's been through that 8-year plan, I can guarantee if you put 25 Pakistani kids into a cricket environment in this country coached by the coaches that have gone through the system, I guarantee by the time little Johnny at 11 gets to 19, he'll be an unbelievable fielder and he'll understand the game better. And what I would expect him to do is his Pakistani natural ability, bat and possibly ball skill level with the ball will come through, and all of a sudden you make a better. I think just that one little tweak would make a huge amount of difference. But that culture I don't think will ever change, where the old man at the top stands there and tells you what to do. You do this and you do that. And I think that is where, the layers underneath that a lot of cricket boards have got, and cricket structures and cricket coaching and cricket environments have got around the world, which makes them better. I don't think that happens in that part of the world. And hands up, you could possibly say that's in India as well. So where's the difference between India and Pakistan? Over to you. There's more people in India, but if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, Sri Lanka's,
India will be the same.
Yeah, Sri Lanka's had issues. India's had the same. I think the IPL's been so powerful that. I know what you're talking about, the old pot-bellied coach that you and I have both seen in India and Sri Lanka and those countries, right? Pakistan. I think that is being changed quite drastically by just money, right? Like, we just had a kid the other day who never played a senior game who played in the IPL, right? No one cares what the old coach says anymore. Why the coaches hadn't been playing that 24-year-old left-arm wrist spinner, I don't understand, Harmy. But the metrics said he was really good. So I think there's a dynamicism there. But basically, what is there, 250 million people in Pakistan compared to 1.3 billion? There are whole parts of India that they're still not getting talent out of, right? Like, there are whole parts of India that they could still do that. But if you are Pakistan, I think you have to be, better. And they're not the only team struggling in the world, right? Sri Lanka's going through a very similar issue at the same time.
That sounds like a topic for another day as well, doesn't it? You are watching Following On. So we look ahead to the summer. What England player do you think that the Indians fear more than any other?
Joe
Root?
Yeah.
Okay, you say Joe, and you say?
I suppose it's Joe Root.
Joe or the captain?
Yeah, I thought maybe Harry Brook might be up there as well, but I'm not sure how they feel about him playing against spin. I think other teams would fear him more. I'm not sure if India fear him as much.
So not the bowlers, considering the conditions that they're going to be facing England.
Who's their best bowlers?
England don't know their bowlers.
Yeah. I don't really know what England's attack is. No. People keep saying what sort of pitches England could put up, and I was like, I don't know if England could make that decision right now. Could they? 5
Test matches against India, 5 Test matches against Australia. I can pick the top 7 now for all 10 games, bar an injury. Forget form. They're just going to pick these 10. Pick them 7. The other 4, I've got no idea. I really haven't. I mean, I'm now at the point of going, with Stokes' body the way it is, England can't pick a spinner. England have to play 4 seamers, because if they pick the spinner, he doesn't bowl very well, and he hasn't gone on the trajectory, I think, Shoaib Bashir that England wanted him to. That puts pressure on the captain to start bowling. If he starts bowling, his body then falls apart. We can't not have him playing, so we can't have him injured. So I'm moving more towards the way of having your 2 fast bowlers and two English type bowlers, especially in this country. So for me, if everybody's fit and everybody's ready, first Test match come, I would play the top 7 as they are, which everybody knows they are: Crawley, Duckett, Pope, Root, Book, Stokes, Smith.
Is Pope definitely 3?
He has to. There's nowhere else for him to bat. Unless he's swapping with Harry, there's nowhere else for him to bat.
Or he doesn't play.
Yeah, he doesn't.
And they bring
play.
another batter.
Do they play? I think that. I mean,
they play Bethel. We can bowl some.
I think they've invested too much in Ollie Pope. With these 10 Test matches coming up, I think Ollie Pope plays over Jacob Bethel. But
you know what the sunk fallacy cost is? Like, if you keep investing in something that doesn't give back to you because you've already invested in it. Like, at a certain point, like, I'd be very surprised if Ollie Pope is still playing by the 10th Test.
By the 10th Test, might be an argument if Jacob Bethel's going scoring runs, but for me, I think that's where they'll start 7, and I would go with Carse, Wokes, Archer, and Potts. I think Potts just over Cook.
Sorry, say that again. Who are you bowlers?
Carse, Wokes, Archer, and Potts just over. Okay. Potts over Cook, so that I bring Sam Cook into.
What about Gus?
the thing. I think Gus is fighting with Brydon Carson. I'd probably just punt Carson over Atkinson, who has had a brilliant summer.
All of that, of
last
course,
summer,
is not what my question
No,
was.
it wasn't.
But in a way, it answers the
Yeah.
question with a different bit. That to me, hearing what you just said, that suggests that it's Ben Stokes then that India would fear most, because if they can destabilise the Stokes part of all this, then everything else falls apart.
If there's no Stokes, England fall apart.
But if Root doesn't make runs, they're not winning this season.
Well, then Brooke might score runs.
I don't. I've got massive questions about Brooke against really good quality spin.
Well, they won't face a lot of it.
Yeah,
Jadeja, that's it.
it'll be Jadeja.
Yeah, I'm not saying that he's not a good spinner, but it's not like.
but in
it's
English
not like
conditions,
what,
what you're
I mean, Ashwin's not
like-
coming, is he? So
So there's no Ashwin. I mean, even when he did come, he didn't play.
yeah, and Washington Sundar, I don't think they'll
No,
play him.
it will be Jadeja, and that's it. There's going to be no Coldie.
Look,
There's going to be no.
If you're asking who they fear the most,
Yeah.
it is going to be Root.
Yeah.
I think that's the question. That's the answer. I think that's right. I was lucky enough for my book to talk to Raul Dravid, and it was really interesting. We were going through, everyone put all the pressure on Joe Root for the reverse
Yeah.
laps and everything, and he was saying, "What do you think Root's worst shot was in the last couple of years?" And I said, "There was a shot against was it against Ashwin or against Akshar Patel where he came down the wicket and tried to slog across the line."
Yeah.
And Raul Dravid was like, "That is the correct answer." And then he went on he goes, "That was the moment we knew that we were back in front and we were probably going to win, because up until then England and Raul was really honest about this. He was like, we didn't think Ollie Pope could do that. We were sitting there going, oh my God, we had all these plans and they've completely punched us in the mouth." And then Joe Root did that and they went, oh, it's not going to last.
We could see that with Pope, though. I mean, Rohit Sharma, we talked about the captaincies, but Rohit Sharma, we were in, obviously me, Manners and Scott were in Hyderabad, and we're sitting on the terrace where the camera gantry is, right outside our commentary box, and we're watching Rohit Sharma. Me and Manners were talking about it. We're watching Rohit Sharma and going, he's not bothered about Ollie Pope reverse sweeping. He's happy Ollie Pope's going to get 20, 30. He's never going to get these runs. I mean, they were like, nah, don't matter. And he was signalling, nah, leave him.
Yeah.
Leave the whole thing there. So I even, India didn't believe Ollie Pope could play that sort of innings. So
Ollie Pope probably will never play that innings again. His false percentage shot was about 60.
It wasn't ideal. he wasn't in control.
for the first 40 he was. First 40, 50, he was like a cat not tin roof. Like
He got really good after that.
after that,
Yeah,
from
he was
50 to
still
100,
dropped twice
100.
after.
Yeah.
Oh no, but that's what I'm saying. So India they were like, Ollie Pope has done this.
Yeah.
Ben Duckett can do this. Fine, we can overcome that. But Root was the one they were like, if Root partners with Duckett or Pope, now we're in all sorts. When they thought that Root was in his head a little bit, they were like, that was when they felt relaxed. So I would assume it would be the same situation, because there's no strike bowler to worry about, is there? Do you know what I mean? Even like, I think we all probably pick Cass. Oh, I would pick Cass as my first England bowler at the moment, depending on Jofra's fitness. So Cass is the first England bowler in. I've nothing but respect for what Brydon Cass has done in international cricket. But if I was an international top-level batter, I'd be like, if that's their best bowler, we've got a chance here.
Yeah, but like Gus, you're just starting. You know, it's not Brydon Cass 25 Test matches. It's Brydon Cass
exactly.
handful.
He might be very different.
You don't know how he's gonna go about. I think Cass and Atkinson probably fight for the same role. Wokes has to play.
I don't think Atkinson can play at the moment.
I think, but I think maybe he's with a red ball. And I think up until he got that hat trick in at the Basin, he was struggling.
I think
He
Gus
was
plays.
struggling. Yeah.
Really? I'm
I'll tell you why.
I'm very worried about his bowling at the moment.
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest that you shouldn't be. I think he bowled pretty well in New Zealand.
Up until after he got the hat trick.
and
Before that, he didn't bowl as
No,
well.
he was a bit slow
Yeah.
in that first spell at Christchurch,
Yeah.
but he also bats well.
Yeah, but in this, you've got Wokes coming in. You've got Brydon Cass coming in.
I think he's made runs. I don't think he bats well.
I think
he did.
Cass is a better batter than Brydon.
Cass is a better bat, and Wokes is a better bat.
Atkinson.
Wokes, I'd say, is a different argument.
No, but what I'm saying is
do-
they have extra batting if they go with that lineup, which I would go with.
This would have Matt Potts coming in at number 11, who's got a first class 149.
He can bat, yeah.
Yeah, I still think Gus
he can bat
plays
like
ahead of
Atkinson.
Potts.
I mean,
If you've got Wokes, I don't think you need Potts quite as much.
I think Potts is your reliable.
I think
you're
that's
not
Wokes.
going to get anything.
That's Wokes.
No, but I think Potts is that little bit quicker. I think he bridges the gap between Wokes and your fast bowler, and I think because of the English surfaces and the English conditions, I think me personally now, I've gone away. I used to look at Potsy and go, he's probably just a little short for that international, what you're thinking. I think now, because of the last however many test matches we've played, we've brought in so many debutants, and they've all got 5 wickets, and they've all got injured. We've never been able to build a bowling attack around it. Me now, I'm looking at Chris Wokes, who I know for a fact can hold one end up, be very, very consistent. He didn't bowl as well as he would in New Zealand, but I think in English conditions, the average he has. I think Chris Wokes and Matt Potts, we have to have a structure to our bowling. And Potts doesn't get injured. He's very reliable. He knows where the top of off stump is. His first ball's at 84 mile an hour. His last ball's at 87.
Hang on.
I'm going with Potts.
Right. Fair enough if England tour New Zealand this year, but they don't. They tour Australia. This isn't about India.
I think Potts will be a really good bowler on current Australian wickets. Wokes should take wickets overseas. I can't explain why it doesn't happen.
So who's...
But did you watch the last series?
The ball's changed a bit.
Kookaburra balls changed,
Yes,
and Australian
of course.
pitches
The
have
pitches,
changed.
yeah.
Do you know who would be perfect for it? Matthew Potts, who bowls very similar to Scott Boland.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. But I still think that Gus Atkinson will play.
Well, the last time I saw him,
Ahead of
he was bowling dead straight at 132 kilometres an hour. So he either needs to get some pace or work out how to make the ball move more.
He's had a good
he
break,
was
though,
he,
which is good.
Yeah,
He looked terrible.
Depends on how he starts for Surrey. He's had a good break. If he goes and smashes it for Surrey, yes, he's even more. He's ahead of Bryden Carse because of what he did last summer. But I'm going off a gut feel and gut pick against India, where if one of these 6 gets in on a flat one, who's going to get him out? I think that's Bryden Carse, just over Gus Atkinson.
Yeah, I think Carse plays.
But another
I
one,
think Atkinson plays as well.
I want my pool of bowlers. I want my pool of bowlers to be reliable.
Atkinson has to be in the pool.
There's a lot of talk about.
Yeah.
Is Josh Tongue fit?
Yeah, but that's the thing. There's a lot of talk about the Josh Tongues and
this is fair. The other thing is Jofra, because I can't see Jofra playing.
He's the only
that first test. I just can't see it.
Why in the first test?
Because he would have played no red ball cricket. He plays IPL cricket until when? May the 21st.
But we've seen guys do that now and play World Test Championship final straight after, right? Like,
yeah, but it's Jofra Archer when he hasn't played red ball.
You're saying his body.
I'm saying his body, and for all the stuff that Harmy was saying.
There's no reason why I can't play for the Lions.
Isn't there a gap between
the first innings?
Yeah.
There'll be a Lions game.
Yeah, maybe.
He'll play Sussex second 11.
There's an exclusive for you.
Yeah, he's playing for Surrey.
Yeah.
Sussex, he's probably been offered a deal. Sussex second 11 games as well. He'll be able to play red ball games before the test.
And you play Lions. I mean, the Lions. There will be Lions games. I think there'll be a lot of Lions games this year against the Tour.
Well, there are. There's one at Canterbury and there's one at Northampton.
And
maybe he'll play in one of them.
He'll play in the first innings.
I
of one of them.
still think it's a push.
Canterbury, not Beckenham.
I know. Gutted. Who is the player that England fear the most then? Is it Jasper? Is it Bumrah or bust for India? Because we talk about the makeup of the England bowling attack. I would say there's question marks over the Indian one.
Yeah.
If Mohammad Shami, can Bumrah bowl in 5 tests? Mm-hmm. Can Shami?
Well, they're talking about them each playing 2 tests each at the moment.
Right. So there's quite a drop off.
We talked about with Deep Das Gupta on one of these shows beforehand of neither of our problem with Mohammad Siraj is as a third seamer he's fine.
Yeah.
But every time he's a second seamer he can't. He just because he doesn't know his bowling. He doesn't understand how to get himself back into rhythm when he's out of rhythm. And as your second bowler, that just opens up everything. We saw that against Australia at times. He actually bowled fine in that series. If he was the third bowler and Mohammad Shami was around, they probably might have even, stolen that series or at least, got away with a draw. That's the issue that India have at the moment. What's his name? Harshit, the big fella, hits the wicket hard. He's got a really good heart. He doesn't really understand bowling all that much at the moment, and he's young and he hasn't played that much first-class cricket.
You've got Krishna as well.
You got Prasid Krishna, who, look, I'm a huge fan of Prasid Krishna and have been for a long time, but they keep not picking him.
Yeah.
Arshdeep Singh, been in the system for a while, they keep not picking these guys.
It looks as though they'll play ready at 8. He will be at 8.
So
is he a good enough fourth seamer?
That was going to.
But you've also got. I think you've got a more reliable spinner.
Well, that changed.
So that changes.
But then you don't have the all-rounder.
So are you?
Yeah. Well, you've got 2 all-rounders. You've got KL Rahul as an all-rounder, and you've got Rishabh Pant or KL Rahul, whoever's keeping wicket, and then you've got Jadeja. Then you've got Reddy at number 8, and then I personally, if I was India, I'd pick the best 4 fast bowlers I could. So if it's Rana, Bumrah, Shami, and Siraj, none of them can bat really.
No.
But I'm not bothered because I think in English conditions, I want my 4 best bowlers to knock over England's top order. Because I think if you knock over if you get England 2 down, like we've seen, there's a vulnerability. That's where you can get into England's middle order. So I'm going to go with the best 4 seamers as opposed to going number 8 can bat. Forget number 8 can bat. I've got Jadeja coming in at number 7. I want the best 4 seamers in English conditions. And for me, you're looking at Bumrah and Shami.
Yeah.
Who do England fear most? If Bumrah's fit, there's a contest on. If he's not fit, we've seen India. I think over the course of the time, when Shami's fit and no Bumrah, they're a bit toothless. When Bumrah's fit and Shami's not fit, they're a bit toothless. It's basically Bumrah or nothing. If they're both fit, they're best. For me, they're one of the best teams. They're one of the best teams in the world. If they're both fit, they're favourites.
And they play the majority of the tests. Yeah,
there's only one of them.
The whole thing with the best 4 fast bowlers, I think, the reason they might bowl Nitesh or use Nitesh is, I don't think they have 4 fast bowlers that they specifically trust. That might be different. You know, they might see the guys in the nets and they might trust one of those other guys. But they can come in with some really funky lineups too. Like they can bat. They can have Washington at 6, Jadeja at 7, and Nitesh at 8, which means they have literally a top order that goes down to number 8. Between those 3 guys, they hope that they get enough bowling out of, and then the 3 seamers at the other end.
So, am I right in thinking that India's strategy the last time they were in England was very much, we will pick 4 bowlers?
That was Shardul, wasn't it?
Yeah, and we will back those bowlers to take. So they're not.
Yeah.
They're going to have to go against that. They're going to.
My memory, and I could be wrong, but when Bazball happened, England just looked at Shardul and went. Yeah. And that's what's going to happen with Nitesh Reddy. In the old days, you'd pick Nitesh Reddy for England, and he'd wobble it around, and England would be leaving him for hours on end. And now you're just like, you know, he's fine.
It also depends on what you're going to play on.
Yeah, and
overhead conditions. If you get warm conditions, ball swinging, all of a sudden your left armour comes into the game. You know, there's a lot of variables. I mean, England's the hardest place in the world to tour to pick a squad because you just don't know what you're going to get till you get there. You might get a green surface, you might get a flat one, you might get lucky with the weather. You got Headingley, and you're going, oh, we win the toss, we're looking that way and not that way, if you know what I mean. So Lords is the same. So these are the.
What wickets would you put out if you were England? And I know that England, some of the grounds won't listen anyway, but
flat ones.
You have to play.
I don't think you can play India on flat pitches.
The problem you've got is this batting team can only play on flat wickets.
I'm not.
Unless they change their game plan.
I think
they can only play on flat wickets. I would play on something. I would have something in it.
If you've got
this batting team can't.
If you've got Bumrah and Shami, I think you actually need to have seaming wickets and take them on that way, and just make it a shootout with their batters, and hope that Crawley gets an 80 when it's important, and Stokes goes nuts occasionally.
The question was, who was the player that England fear the most? And we've spoken about
Bumrah.
So it's Bumrah, right?
Yeah.
That's obvious.
Because we don't know. I know Jaiswal failed in South Africa. Wasn't many games. Played really well in Australia on a low scoring series. But I don't think if I'm England, I'm like, he might be the best player in the world in 2 years' time, but he's not now, and Bumrah is the best player in the world. If you had a choice of which player you don't want to play all the test matches, if you're England, you pick Bumrah, not Jaiswal, right? And all the older players for India are not, Rohit and Virat and all those guys.
You fear Virat because it's his last tour.
Yeah.
And he's this is where he resides at this moment in time, and he's a world. I mean, he's the great.
You fear him, but he's not number 1
at the minute. No, he's not. But if he goes and gets a score in that first Test match, then you quickly change from Bumrah to Kohli, because Kohli's.
I don't know him. So he made runs in Australia in the first Test match.
But only when runs have been scored. Yeah. I can't see it. He's had. This is his. How many tours of England has he had? It's not coming up against Anderson.
That bowling by Bumrah in Australia is probably one of the best touring bowling we've ever seen, right? And don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of Virat Kohli, and peak Virat Kohli would be a very different conversation. Yeah. But where he is now, he'd have to make 300s in his first 3 Test matches before I'd switch from Bumrah. Yeah. Just because Bumrah.
Oh no, he'd never switch from Bumrah.
So it's a quick question for you: who will score the most runs for India? Top 7.
Ooh.
Which batter would you back to score the most runs?
You know, KL Rahul's batted well.
I was just about to say
KL
KL Rahul,
hasn't he? I'm probably going to go Jaiswal because I just feel like English.
I will go Jaiswal.
Just hilariously now, it probably seems almost as much in Australia as it does in England. And I thought that was going to be his big test, and I thought he played really well.
Also, when he gets in, right?
Yeah, he does not
And
stop
then
around.
he just goes big.
Yeah.
I would say Jaiswal. And he's going to have the most opportunity
We're
to
playing
do
on
so.
quick. All England grounds are quick scoring grounds. For me, from an England point of view, I hope it's KL Rahul, because if it's KL Rahul, England have put India under a huge amount of pressure.
Yeah, no, I could see that. And also, like, KL Rahul is...
He would have to be the firefighter.
Yeah.
Him and Jadeja.
Might want to edit that out. Can England take anything from the way that New Zealand went against Jasprit Bumrah?
Well, New Zealand always seem to do well against Jasprit Bumrah, so I don't know if they've got secret sauce or he just doesn't like going up against them. Like, I haven't seen anything in their batting that looks revolutionary against it. But you look at his record overall against New Zealand, and it's like he's literally the best bowler in the world against everyone, and then Kiwis walk out and he doesn't make it work. So, I didn't see anything that England could replicate, because I don't remember New Zealand doing anything special. I would say that the way New Zealand played the spinners was more interesting than anything else. But no, I didn't see anything there.
England are just going to play one way. They only know how to play one way. They're designed to play one way by the order they've got. So whether it's Bumrah, whether it's Shami, whether it's Rana, Reddy, even when Jadeja comes on, I think England are only going to play one way, and that's why they'll probably have to play on a surface which has got very little in it.
Thanks for joining us here on Following On.